Hello, today we're reviewing another retailer. I made a video about Williams-Sonoma recently, and so I think this is going to be very interesting to compare these two because they have similar challenges where they have a lot of SKUs, and so what retailers tend to do is they want to show a lot of products. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but I think it's interesting to compare emails from two different brands that kind of use the same format where they have the same challenges, and so let's see how they deal with those challenges. Obviously, the focus here is dark mode and dark mode analysis, so that's what we're going to focus on from the beginning. If you've seen the video about Williams-Sonoma, we can see that the header was quite messy in the beginning. Here, they opted for a single image as the header. So this has a drawback that you can't use any custom, links like a lot of brands do these menu links at the top. However, there's a question of whether these links are important, relevant, and that might depend on the brand. But obviously, here Nordstrom made the decision that at least for mobile screens, they don't want to display any of these links. So that leaves them free to just have one big image for the header, and they have a little GIF here that shows us a banner. So there is definitely some activity going on here, but it's very far from being called visual clutter, right? This is organized. This is intentional, and so it looks very nice in dark mode. The one thing I'd criticize here is there's a strip between this header image and the beginning of this email, which the GIF here is white, so why not remove that spacer altogether and make sure there's no space between those two images? That's one thing. And it's an easy thing, right? You just have to test it, and then you'll see this, and all you have to do is see where there's padding or margins between your two blocks and remove that. And you'd have a beginning of the email that looks a little bit more consistent. So that's the one thing I'd point out here. Easy fix. Overall, this header looks good. And so it's nice that there's a GIF here, but we don't want to focus on that. So here you can see there's quite a mix between these images. So obviously this is a GIF, so it's an image format. Then there's some HTML here, some button. And then we have another image, another HTML, a button that's quite wide. Let's just kind of go back a little bit. We have some things to see here. You can see that this is a mix, right? And I've talked about this sort of golden rule I have where we either just build full image or full HTML and don't mix the two, because if you mix the two, then you introduce things like this here, where there's some HTML followed by an image followed by more HTML. So then it looks like there's lots of different background colors. I mean, there's two different background colors, but they alternate in this sort of zebra pattern. I mean, you can see here also this button being full width makes it look like another one of these stripes. Instead of if they made the button a little bit smaller, it wouldn't look quite as much as if there was like this zebra pattern that we don't want to have, that a lot of brands have in dark mode because of this mix between image and HTML. So this golden rule I have is for simplicity. I sometimes mix the two, but I like talking about this golden rule because if you follow it, then you will avoid a lot of issues. If you mix images and HTML, it's not that it can't be done, it's that you have to be a lot more careful and do a lot more testing to make sure that you don't get this sort of situation. So I stopped here because this is, I think, the best highlight of what's going on in this email to various degrees, right? And at the top, it's okay. I mean, it looks a little bit confusing here, a little bit cluttery here, but not too much. And I think it gets pretty bad here because we have different colors here. This is a different shade of dark as well, and it doesn't help with this full width button and this white text on dark background, and above that the header is a different background, so then it just kind of doesn't make sense. What you could do is cut off the header here, right? Cut off after this image and make the header also HTML, so at least you would kind of group this text section into its own group, and then make that button not full width, because this, again, in the context of dark mode, this looks like it's not something against full width buttons in general, but in the context of this email in dark mode, it just looks like one more stripe. So if this is an image, make it HTML and give it a little bit of margin so that it actually looks like a button and not another stripe. I think I don't want to comment on this because I think this is just a stylistic choice. They wanted to have these designer shoes here. I do think in dark mode it doesn't help. But keeping in mind that we're going for 80% of the bright mode version, I think this would be within that margin, right? If we fixed everything else, this could exist in here and it wouldn't really be too cluttery. definitely we want to fix that. This is an image where it should definitely be text. Um, and then one thing that is interesting about these, and I'm not a fan of it, is you can see here that the text is cut off very closely. And this won't show on a bright mode email. Obviously, all of this will be white, so it'll look like there's more of a margin. But when you're doing products like this, you either have to do HTML product sections, and in this case, this should also be HTML, or you go full images. Again, golden rule, full images here, and you do the header as an image that goes all the way. There's no spacer here. There's no margin. There's no margin on these sides either. It's all white, and so it stays that way. And then all these products have to also have a white background with no margins. So here the problem is there's margins. If there weren't any margins, this would look fine. But the problem is that there are margins, and so it looks like it looks cut off, but also wired. It looks like there's this weird grid going on. So I think there's some things that can be fixed about this as well, just to make sure that this it's not a problem to alternate to make this whole thing HTML and then this whole thing images, right? That's okay. It's within the 80%. It's not going to look as nice as the original email, but it's within the 80% where we are keeping user experience and functionality at maximum while sacrificing only a little bit of aesthetics. Here we're below 80. Like these are things that are not necessary. This is a little bit of visual clutter that adds no additional function, right? We could easily remove these margins, make the white margins on these images a little bit bigger, and get the same user experience and less clutter. So in this case, this is why I think this should be made differently. And then at the bottom, we have the spacer, and we have another image, more HTML, and I believe this is a mix of images and HTML. So overall, there's a lot of mixes, which leads to a lot of stripes. And again, this is an email. This is a kind of a challenging way of building emails, which can be done, but you have to really think in terms of sections. And so within each of these sections, you don't have to apply the golden rule of only working with images or only HTML, across the entire email, but you do have to apply it across sections, right? So then you have to just pick this, header and header image here. This is one section, only images. Remove that strip, right? This only HTML. Make this HTML. I guess this is part of the image, so this is where it gets a little bit confusing. This is also something to think about. Maybe in this case, we have to keep it that way and just kind of accept that this is going to be a trade-off, or we give up the functionality of having this GIF and turn this entire headline into HTML text so that we can make it visually make sense, so that this headline is visually attached to this paragraph, right? And then in this case, we would also make these HTML buttons that can change colors based on the background color and not images. And then we go here to the next section. This is just one image, single image, no problem, right? This, however, should be part of this. So it should have the same background, therefore it should be HTML. So then, we have this whole HTML section here, for example, and then we turn to a single image, only image, and then again, HTML, right? HTML goes down all the way until here. Then we go to full images again, remove all these margins, make sure it's all images. And then here we can follow and go do the same thing. I'm noticing this video is a little bit long. I don't want to repeat myself a bunch of times. It is this principle, it's you think in sections, kind of section off different parts of your email. This is images, this is HTML, and that will lead you to the 80% visual integrity, right? So because then you have very unified section that kind of jump into a different section, but at least there's kind of visual hierarchy instead of here. There's a little bit of chaos, unfortunately, in some of these sections, right? If we just look at this, there's a little bit of chaos where it's not thought of in terms of sections. So that is really what I would recommend if you want to mix HTML and text, or if you have to for any reason. That is what I would really recommend, is not to deviate from this and make sure that, okay, this is only images and then this section below is only text, and we have to work within these boundaries, even if that means that the button we're going to use maybe doesn't use the font we want to have, right? I think in the end, this is usually worth the trade-off. Yeah, this was Nordstrom's email. If you've watched the Williams-Sonoma email, feel free to let me know in the comments if you think which one you think did a better job in terms of dark mode, and I'll see you in the next video.